Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I'll be your instructor for English language. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. If you don't have the application already installed on your device, I will want you to download the app in order to follow along in the class. ExamGuide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams like UTME, post-UTME, WAEC, GCE, KCPE, IJMB, JUPEB, BECE, JSCE, NCEE, NECO, etc. You can download the app from www.examguide.com or Google Play Store. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to be updated on new videos. Ready for today's class? Okay, let's get started. Welcome to our class. It's another time out in English language, and today we want to look at a special topic. Though most times we have this notion that it's basically taught in literature, but it's necessary that as scholars of English we have little knowledge on this very topic, owing to the fact that in our comprehension passage and in our spoken English, it's expected that we make use of figures of speech while speaking, and we may encounter it in comprehension passages. So right away we'll have to go into the topic, and that's figures of speech. Figures of speech. Now, sometimes people mistake figures of speech to be idioms. We need to clear that fact that they are not the same thing. Figures of speech are quite different from idioms. Now, while idioms have to do with fixed meanings, figures of speech have to do with speaking in a language outside of the ordinary. When you speak in or rather in a way that it's not the ordinary way of speaking, that's figures of speech. All right, so I want to look at the definition proper and basically some examples on chosen ones. We're not going to exhaust all the figures of speech we have for today. So we just want to look at basically 5. Let's say the commonest ones, then subsequently we can actually go into the others. Now, a figure of speech or rhetorical figure is a word or phrase that intentionally deviates from ordinary language use. It deviates from ordinary language use. Now, there is a particular way we speak or particular way we write. And when you write in that manner or speak in that manner, virtually everybody understands what you have to say. All right, let me just quickly give an instance. I can just come to a place and say that somebody has died. That's the normal way of speaking, or the ordinary way we could pass a message about someone's death. But some other person could come in and choose to say that so person or Mr. Smith has kicked the bucket. Mr. Smith has kicked the bucket. So you see that I have deviated, or rather the person who came in to pass this message has deviated from the normal way of passing message across to another way. So people who are there who have never come across passed, or rather kicked the bucket, will be confused at what the person has said, and that is why we refer to figures of speech as the intentional deviation or intentional moving away from the ordinary way of speaking or the ordinary way of using language. So there are so many other examples. I can say I want to go to the toilet to urinate. That's the ordinary way of speaking. But you see that some other person would come and tell you, I want to pass water, and you're wondering what the person is trying to pass across. So that's what figures of speech does. It actually makes you speak in a way that is figurative. Let me put it that way. It makes you speak in a way that is figurative. It is not the normal way of speaking, but rather it beautifies. That's what figures of speech do. Figures of speech beautify a work of art. Now, if you read a work of art of two persons, one writes in an ordinary way and the other person adopts figures of speech, or what we call figurative language as well, you will see that to an extent, if you are learned or you enjoy reading books, you would more or less enjoy that work of art written with figurative languages than that which is written in plain language. So that is that about the definition. All right, so basically we have a whole lot of figures of speech. We have so many of them. We make use of them in sentences intentionally or unintentionally. But today we want to just look at 5 of them, 5 figures of speech that are quite interesting. They are commonly used by people, even when we don't know we have applied them. But today you will understand that somehow you've been using figures of speech, but you never knew that you've been using them. So basically we'll be looking at simile, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, and oxymoron. These are the 5 we'll be looking at. You can see that I mentioned that we have about 20 figures of speech, but we want to restrict our knowledge for today. It's not like we are not going to go further into others. By adventure, you have a hunger to know more of them. But we just want to restrict our knowledge to simile, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, oxymoron. Now we have others like euphemism. Euphemism is actually the example I used while I was talking about speaking out of the ordinary way. When somebody wants to pass water, that's saying something harsh in a mild way to kick the bucket. You know, when someone says he kicked the bucket, your mind may just assume that the person used his leg or her leg to kick a bucket, but you wouldn't know that the person is saying someone has died. So we have a whole lot of them. You have hyperbole. That's when you say something and you know that within you, you're exaggerating it. But today, let's just basically look at these very 5. Now, I want to kick off with simile. Simile. Now, in figures of speech, we have their classifications. We have figures of comparison. We have figures of sound, all right? So under figures of comparison, we have just about 2 of them, and that is simile and metaphor. So whenever you hear the word simile or hear the word metaphor, what should come to your mind is that things are being compared. Now the question is, what are these things that are being compared? It is okay when you say that Jerry is more handsome than Zigmatech. Jerry is more handsome than Zigmatech. Now, I have actually compared 2 people. That's the normal way of comparing people. But when we talk about simile in comparison, we are comparing 2 things that are not the same in physical appearance. They are practically not the same, but because the human nature or the human in this comparison behaves like a particular thing or animal, we now compare that person to that very thing. That's just the difference between the normal comparison you do to the comparison in respect to simile. So in simile, we actually use as and like to make our comparisons. Remember, I told us we have 2 figures of comparison, and that is simile and metaphor. Now, along the line, we will try to differentiate between simile and metaphor. How do I know? Both of them are figures of comparison. How do I know when I'm comparing, when I'm making use of simile and when I'm making use of metaphor? Now, one striking difference between simile and metaphor in their respect to comparison is that simile makes use of as and like. Simile makes use of as and like, or rather as or like, but metaphor doesn't make use of as or like. Now, I know that to an extent you must have said she's as beautiful as an angel. That was why I said so many of us make use of these figures of speech, but we do not know because we have not been taught or not been exposed to what they really are. So when we say she's as beautiful as an angel, we have made use of the figure of speech called simile because we have used as and like to compare 2 persons. We are saying that Sharon is as beautiful as an angel. So you see that Sharon is not an angel, but it's possible that at some point or rather seeing Sharon, her beauty speaks more like that of an angel. So you compare them. Not that they are similar in respect to behavioral patterns, or they are similar in respect to physical features, but there is this attribute about Sharon that she propels, and you liken it. That's the word. You liken it to that of an angel. You see someone say she's as black as coal or charcoal. She's as black as coal. You are comparing. You're trying to say that as much as this person is dark, the only thing I can use to compare has her complexion, though complexion has nothing to do with black, but that's what we use. Complexion can either be dark, fair, but we say that she's as black as charcoal. Is just a figurative way of speaking, and that way you compare the complexion of that person to a charcoal. So we have here, it says simile is a literary term where you use like or as to compare two different things and show a common quality between them. That's quality. There's something they share in common. Not that that person is actually that thing, but there is a quality that you see in this person that is in that other thing that you want to compare him or her with. So a simile is different from simple comparisons. I've just cleared that simile is different from simple comparison. By simple comparison, we mean normal comparison that has nothing to do with figurative language. It's just the plain language. It says in that it usually compares two unrelated things. They are not related. All right, so let's look at this. It says, for example, she looks like you. Yeah, I'm comparing somebody, or she's as fair as you. That's comparison. She's as beautiful as you. That's comparison. You're trying to compare two people. She looks like you, though more beautiful. Those are comparisons. Now it says is a comparison but not a simile. On the other hand, simile, she smiles like the sun. In other hand, for simile, the example would be she smiles like the sun. So you know that the sun, once the sun comes out, it shines so much so that everybody around can feel it. So what they're saying is once she smiles, her smile is so broad that it draws attention. So it's a smile as it compares a woman with something of a different kind, and what it compares the woman with is the sun. So we are not going to, in normal simile, or rather in normal comparison, we just compare people, but we don't do that with another thing entirely. So when you don't compare people entirely with something different, you have not made use of simile, you have just done simple comparison. But when you are talking about simile, that means you have to compare human being with something that is not living. That's just it, something not living. So similes find or perhaps create similarities in typically different things. In fact, there may be no real similarity between the things compared, such as a woman and the sun. I don't see how the woman and the sun share anything in common. But what we are just saying is that because the sun shines so much, the woman smiles so broad, she's being compared to the sun. She's likened to the sun. So this is the example we have here. Her smile is as bright as the sun, or her smile is bright like the sun. So it's either you use your as or you use your like. Now these are some examples that we have for simile so that you could learn them better. My heart is like a singing bird. You know what a singing bird? Once a bird is singing, it's very excited. So the heart, once the heart is excited, so it's likened. The heart of a person, of a man, of a woman, is likened to a singing bird. That's the person talking. That my heart is like, he or she is comparing his or her heart like a singing bird. Because when a bird sings, you know, it's usually melodious. So that's it. You are as brave as a lion. So one thing we must know is that these comparisons are situational. These comparisons are situational. You should have that at the back of your mind. We are not saying that that is what the heart is. We are not saying that the person is brave. What we're saying is the person is as brave as a lion. So maybe the person must have displayed an attitude or maybe an attribute rather, an attribute of a lion. Maybe a situation came around and the person stood his ground or her ground and had to fight it. So the person at that point, or someone who may be there at the point something happened, may say, you were as brave as a lion. So that's that. So they fought like cats and dogs. We know the cat and dog now, they usually don't go together. No wonder we have an idiom which says to rain cats and dogs. When it rains cats and dogs, it means that the rain isn't a friendly one. All right. So in this case, we are saying they fought like cats and dogs. So the people were likened, the two persons that fought were likened to as what? Cats and dogs, because they fought not minding if they were going to kill themselves. They fought in an unfriendly way. They fought with the notion to win. And that's that. So he is as funny as a barrel of monkey. This house is as clean as a whistle. He is as strong as an ox. Your explanation is as clear as mud. Watching the show was like watching grass grow. So these are examples of simile, basically using as or like. You see that we can't use as or like at the same time. That's why we said use of as or like. We didn't say use of as and like. That would have been a case of having the two in a particular sentence, but it's not possible. We are saying as it's either you make use of as to compare something, or you make use of like to compare something. All right, let's run along. We have metaphor as a second figure of comparison. Metaphor is a figure of comparison. Another one, I told you we have just two figures of comparison, and that is simile and metaphor. So the second one is metaphor. Need I remind us that simile is an indirect figure of comparison, while metaphor is a direct figure of comparison. Now it says a metaphor is a figure of speech that for rhetorical effect directly refers to one thing by mentioning another. It may provide clarity and identify hidden similarities between two different ideas. Expressions often found in literature that describes a person or object by referring to something that is considered to have similar characteristics to that person or that object. So that is it. It's more like in the only difference now is that if I say, since we have one example in simile that says my heart is like a singing bird. My heart is like a singing bird. You could just say my heart is a singing bird. That's the aspect of metaphor. So metaphor, what metaphor does in a sentence of simile is to remove the like or as and point that thing directly. So here we have some examples. Remember we said that metaphor calls a person or a thing another. It does not say it is like that thing, but rather it specifically says it is that thing. That's why we said that it is a figure of speech that directly compares two things of different ideas. It directly does it. It tells you that this person is this. So I know that somehow at some point you must have said you are a fool. You must have told somebody you are a fool. All right. So at that point you have adopted a figure of speech called metaphor by directly saying that one thing is another. So these are some examples. It says life is a highway. It's not saying that life is like a highway. Rather, it's telling us that life is actually a highway. Sometimes you hear people say life is a stage. That's the words of Shakespeare, that life is a stage. That means it's a place of drama. It's a place of acting. All right. So you are actually saying that life is this. So when someone says life is a highway, in life you just have to keep running it. You don't stop. It's not saying that life is like a highway. So her eyes were diamonds. That means her eyes kept shining. So that's if I can easily say her eyes were like diamonds. That's simile. But once I remove the like or as, I have formed a metaphor from that statement. So metaphor tells you that this is this, while simile tells you this is like this. he is a shining star. He's not saying that he is like a shining star. Rather, he's saying he is a shining star. All these things are situational, like I said. Sometimes could remain that way, or according to the person who sees what he sees. But like life is a highway is actually a metaphor, and that is what life really is. So the snow is a white blanket. The snow is a white blanket. It's not telling us that snow is like a white blanket. Rather, it's telling us that snow is a white blanket, because snow is white and the white blanket is also white. So it's saying that snow is a white blanket. She is an early bird. She's an early bird. They don't say she's like an early bird. Rather, she's an early bird. Now, this one says the world is a stage, and all the men and women merely players. You were the light for me, and you were the light for me to find the truth. Here, the person is seen to be light. It's not seen as light, but rather is seen to be the light. Some people say that, oh, my big brother is the light of the family. You're not saying that your big brother is like the light of the family. Rather, you say your big brother is the light of the family. Or what you're saying in that essence, that as long as things are going on well in the family, your big brother is the reason for that thing. So she's the giggle at the funeral. So you go to a funeral, people are laughing, people are happy. She is the reason for that. All right, let's move to personification. Very interesting figure of speech. Very interesting figure of speech. Sometimes we make use of them. Yeah, I don't want to believe that we've never made use of these first three figures of speech that I have treated right now. I'm certain that we have been making use of them, but we just don't know what they are called. So personification, basically, I like personification because it's not hard. Yes, personification is not hard. If there are figures of speech that people should know at their fingertips, they are personification and simile to a large extent. I will not mention metaphor because there are some metaphors that you could see. If you're not enlightened enough in metaphor, you would not actually know that that is metaphor. Now, I forgot to mention, possibly because it's not a class setting. Now, there is what we call implied metaphor. In implied metaphor, it doesn't really seem like the direct metaphor. Implied metaphor looks more like an idiom, so to speak. Yes, it looks more like an idiom because you're speaking based on what you feel. That's why it's called implied. From your implicit knowledge, that's where you get implied metaphor from. It's what you feel considering what is around you. All right, what you feel. Now you come to a place, people are so busy with what they are doing. You came in, they didn't feel your presence, and you could say they were buried. They were buried in what they are doing. That's implied metaphor. That's what you're implying by virtue of what you saw around you. So for personification, it's very easy. You know, when you begin to give things that don't have life, you begin to give them life. That's personification is gotten from the verb word personify. Personified. So when something is personified, that means that thing is being given human attributes. So when I give the laptop a human attribute, or I give the leaf or tree or table or chair, maybe I saw the chair, a student was dragging the chair, I say the chair is walking. When I say the chair is walking, I have personified that chair. I've given life to that chair, because you and I know that those, or rather walking is an act carried out by humans. So for me to now say that the chair is walking, I'm invariably saying that that very thing has been personified. So personification is a figure of speech that gives life to inanimate things. Yes, personification gives life to inanimate things. It allows writers to attribute human characteristics to non-human things without turning those things into human-like characters. We are not going to turn those things. The only thing we are doing is what? Giving human-like attributes to those things. Remember, when we started, I told us that figures of speech, or rather what we refer to as figurative language, or languages are used to beautify a work of art. That's basically the work of the figures of speech. They beautify the work of art. It makes one write figuratively or in a way that is outside the normal. Yes, so that's what it does. Now let's look at some examples of figures of speech. Now we have the word grease. Okay, grease, and we are saying that the grease jumped out of the palm. You know, when you grease your palm, you definitely do so with your oil, and you are saying that the grease jumped out. Maybe at the point you pour the oil or the grease inside the palm, it, by virtue of the fire that is heating it up, it kept popping out from the pan. You are now saying it's jumped out. Jump is an act done by a human being. You and I know that grease cannot actually jump. So at that point, you're saying that the grease jumped out of the pan. You're personifying the grease. Now, other examples are the leaves let go off the tree and danced to the ground. The leaves let go off the tree and danced to the ground. Pardon my not adding the other F, that's off the tree. All right, the wind was angry that night. You can imagine saying that the wind, or rather imagine saying that the wind is angry. How is that even possible? But because of the way it blew, the speaker now termed it to be angry. It needed a way to make it look, you know, figurative in nature. Let it not sound ordinary, to have the weight at which the wind moved. And it says what? That the wind was angry because it was heavy. Some other person would have just said the wind was heavy that night. But some other person choose to speak in a figurative and says the wind was angry. That's just the only difference. When you add beauty to your sentence, that's what figures of speech do for you. So during the night, the blanket crept up until it was snuggled under my chin. You are the one doing the work, but you have referred to the blanket as creeping up. That means you were trying to cover yourself with your blanket. And instead of saying I kept folding the blanket or kept rolling the blanket until it came to my chin, you used the figurative word by saying the blanket crept up. That was a movement done by the blanket. All right, so the next one says the big full moon confidently led me from the forest. You know, when the moon comes out, the moon is a natural light aid. Let me put it that way. It's a natural light aid. And when it comes out, as growing kids those days, it doesn't even come out the way it used to when we were growing up. Those days, when we have full moon, you could actually go anywhere. It's night, but you wouldn't mind because you're certain you will have, you know, a proper aid, like a light aid going home. But now it's not like that. So once the full moon is out, it can actually help you get your way. So it's saying that the moon, which cannot walk or which cannot, you know, direct someone, had to lead the speaker here through the forest. So you see that the moon is being personified as if the moon is a human being that could actually lead the speaker to the house. Now we want to move to the next one, and that's onomatopoeia. Yes, onomatopoeia. What's onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia has to do with sound. All right, this is another figure of speech that is actually interesting and easy to identify when you see them in sentences or when you're asked to do so in an exam condition. Now, onomatopoeia as a figure of sound, all right, has to do with identifying a meaning of a thing by virtue of the sound used. Yes, you know, there are certain things that once you hear the sound, you can quickly attribute it to a thing. I'm certain that if you hear the dog barking, you will know that it's a dog. So that's at that point you are making or applying the figure of speech called onomatopoeia. When you say the barking dog, that is what? Onomatopoeia. So let's see what we have. It says onomatopoeia is the process of creating a word that phonetically imitates, resembles, or suggests the sound that it describes. So this is someone yawning. This another one is gulping, and this is chomp. So these are sounds that are made by people. Now we have the boom of a firework exploding. You have the tick-tock of the clock. Apparently, when the clock is functioning, you keep hearing tick-tock, tick-tock. So once tick-tock is mentioned, you know that is a clock. So in an exam, maybe a comprehension passage is written, and you have a sentence being underlined which has to do with sound, and you saw the tick-tock of a clock, and they underline that aspect and ask what figure of speech is used in the underlined. By the tick-tock, that's the sound made by the clock. You should know it's onomatopoeia. Then we have the ding-dong of the doorbell. Once the doorbell is pressed, back in the days when people have the doorbells, you hear ding dong, ding dong. So that's the bell making the sound. So everybody knows it's the bell. The attention of everybody goes to the bell, that someone is at the door. So what onomatopoeia actually does is to pass a message of using sound to deduce what is being called for or looked out for. You have the clap of chalkboard eraser, then the pitter-patter of the rain. The pitter-patter of the rain. Once it's raining, what you hear? Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. All right, so that's it. Once you hear it, you know it's the rain. How is it possible that you're inside, it's raining, and you understand? Because of that sound that comes with it. Then the bang, a spoon against a pan. Once you hit a spoon against a pan, that's the sound you get. All right, these are some examples of onomatopoeia. The flood water gushed, that's what the flood water does. The owl hooted, the owl hooted. Now we have at night, the wind was howling, ooh, that's the howling sound of the wind. My teeth chattered as I stood in the snow. The corn went pop, leaves crunched, the car horn beeped. So these are examples of onomatopoeia. Now, this is the last one. All right, remember we said for today, we want to look at just 5 figures of speech, hoping that some of the time we will look at some of the 5 continuously until we finish up with some figures of speech. Now we have oxymoron. Oxymoron. Now, oxymoron is a figure of speech that places 2 opposite words side by side. You can imagine that when you have 2 opposite words, like saying cold, hot, weather. That's oxymoron. Some books will tell you it's placing 2 opposite words shoulder by shoulder, just to let you know that they are very close. There isn't any word separating them. Now, some other definitions will tell you is the juxtaposition of 2 words. All right, so let's look at what we have here. It says an oxymoron is a figure of speech that juxtaposes concepts with opposing meanings within a word, all right, that creates an ostensible self-contradiction. It contradicts. What's that? Cold, hot? How is that possible? All right, so, but that's what it is. Remember I told us that figures of speech beautify works. When you're writing and you adopt figures of speech, trust me, the examiner will definitely love your work and would give you a good score because it earns you mark when it comes to expression. All right, so here says a literary device, that's oxymoron is a literary device combining 2 contradicting words to create a new figure of speech. Look at the example we have here, deafening silence. That's deafening silence. Now these are some examples. All right, examples of oxymoron. You have big baby. Can a baby be big? All right, once you have the word baby, the intention is that that person is small. So here we have a big baby. Open secrets. There's no way something can be open and at the same time be a secret. Passive aggressive is not possible. It's either you're aggressive or you are passive. You have original copy. That's what people use, really, but there is nothing like original copy. Copy is what you get out of the original. So original is the main thing. It's just like saying photocopy. So a copy of this means that you have the original. So that time they will be asked to sign something and you say original copy collected by me. It's a very wrong expression. So it's the original collected by me. Once you put original copy, you are using oxymoron, and trust me, that sentence isn't correct. So alone together, how is that possible? Once you have the word together, it means that you have people with you, but alone together is a depiction of oxymoron. Deafening silence, clearly confused, and living dead. You have people say, I'll beat the living dead out of you. So that's what use of oxymoron in a sentence. So we have some examples. The words in red are the oxymorons we have here. You have adult children, mobile home, student teacher, graduate student, working vacation, wise fool. Then you have deafening silence, civil war, holy war, escaped prisoner. How is that possible? Then you have friendly fire. All right, that's that. We've come to the end of the 5 figures of speech, and I have something, an activity I just did on my own. What I did was to make use of these 5 figures of speech in a sentence. Now, know it that a sentence, it's made when you punctuate the full stop. Once you use your full stop, you have made a sentence. Once you also use your question mark, you have also made a sentence. Once you've used your exclamation mark, you've also made a sentence. So you see that in my own example, I was able to make use of the 5 figures of speech taught in a particular sentence, and it reads thus. It says, as the pitter-patter of the rain fell on the pavement like a tiny footsteps, outside I felt this weird familiar sensation run down my spine, and there were leaves running towards my direction, and I said to myself, life is a stage. So you see, I've been able to make use of the 5 figures of speech. The first one, it's my onomatopoeia, that's the pitter-patter, that's the sound made by the rain. The second one is the use of simile, which is the use of like. I didn't bother using as, I had to use like. Now the third figure of speech I used is my oxymoron. That's the last that I explained. That's weird familiar. Something can be strange and at the same time familiar. Then the fourth figure of speech used was what? Personification, where I personified the leaves as things that can run. Then finally I used my metaphor, where I said that life is a stage. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and practice mode. It also has other features that make learning fun. It is a must-have for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to people that will benefit from it. Bye.